Hi everybody, Rosie here. We are doing a video today about some of the history of Fenton. We started this kind of video series, but the last one we did was 7 months ago, so I thought it was about time to come back on. I'm going to take my time in explaining this. I don't want to have to edit this video. So we're going to kind of start where we left off. We're going to talk about Fenton's biggest kept secret. At least I think it is. I didn't know anything about it. But first, we're going to start where we left off, or kind of refresh your memory. And this was 7 months ago. We had talked about Scott Fenton and an interview that he did for the Fenton Flyer back in 2008. And at that time, he was explaining how Fenton was moving forward. And we'll talk about that a little bit. Forward after telling everyone they were going to close. So if we remember, if we remember what we were talking about the market and why Fenton had decided to close. And there were several factors, some of them being Walmart and Target. Scott really felt that those two stores were affecting the sales at Fenton. He was concerned about the marketplace, that there weren't collectors anymore. They didn't want to have what they considered dust collectors. That started the minimalist kind of theme that was out there. Young people weren't interested in it, and it really reflected in the sales at Fenton. And in putting all this together, they weren't getting any phone calls for orders. And the salesmen out on the roads, talking to the different dealers, they weren't getting any sales. So it was pretty darn dismal. That paired off with the recession that we were having, there didn't seem to be any choice. So the Fentons and everybody that managed the company, they made a decision to announce a closing date. And so many factors went into this. The ones we just talked about, but also there were things like they had a very, very high tax bill. They had creditors galore. They had been to the banks. The bank said basically you're worth more dead than you are alive, because they just didn't have the capital. They weren't going to have the capital to pay off the loans. So it was pretty dismal. And they decided that they would start closing the business. They would announce that Fenton was going to close, and then they would work a couple more months with half of their staff to fill the orders that they had out there, and that would be it. So they proceeded with that, made the announcement, cut their workforce. And what happens? The phone starts ringing when the announcement comes through. The orders start coming in. The orders were up a third from what they were. The phone was ringing off the hook. And of course, the staff had already been let go. And, they're thinking, wow, what is going on? Well, of course, all the collectors out there, they wanted to add to their collection before Fenton closed. And so they were buying these pieces. So they began to think, maybe we can give this one more shot. Maybe if we change our business plan, we can change this so that we can operate and stay in business. Maybe we just have to relook at everything. And that's what they did. So they made some changes, and we're going to talk about the changes today. They decided they were going to keep their staff at the place that it was. And that's what they were going to do. They were going to figure out a way to cut costs. So that's what they decided to do. They also decided that the beautiful catalogs, the colorful pictures with all the photography that we used to get, I think 4 times a year, they were going to cut that out. They thought that the catalogs were a thing of the past. Put everything online. Don't worry about the catalogs. That was going to save them some money. They also decided, instead of making the product and increasing their inventory, they were going to be a made-to-order business, which means if the order came in, the piece was made. And they figured that would be a much more efficient way to run the business. And so that's what they did. Again, this was their last breath attempt at staying around. And Scott Fenton said, we're going to have to do some things that you might not like in order to keep us in business. Another thing they did was went international because, again, they needed to have that income coming in. So they thought if they went international, that would be a little more income. So they did that. But they did one other thing that might surprise you, as it did me. And I've been around. I've been in this business for 40 years this summer, and I've been down to the area where Fenton was. I've talked to a lot of people down there through the years, and I didn't know this. What happened and how this came out was us discussing paint. And our groups discussed the current situation out there now with independent artists using coal-fired paint or paint that they bake in their oven to paint on glass and how it wasn't sticking. So this got out, and we actually changed the market, by the way. They're not painting on glossy anymore. But one of the artists who used to work at Fenton wanted to defend the position because she was actually painting with this oven-fired paint. And she says, well, we're just doing what Fenton did. And it was like, what? And she was true. She was truthful. That is what happened in the last days of Fenton. So the last few years, this was all part of the process of changing their business profile, their business design, in order to save money. They didn't want to start the furnaces again. The furnaces were in disrepair. They were antiques. That's why U.S. Glass decided not to purchase Fenton, because of the antique furnaces. They just were beyond being feasibly repaired. They'd have to be replaced. So they did it. They changed their paint, much cheaper paint, more what they thought was more efficient. They were also dealing with California. I think it was Proposition 65. I might have the number wrong, but it was based on lead in paint, and the paint had been tested at Fenton. It didn't even register. There was hardly anything that came up when they tested for it. It was so small a deal. It wasn't even there. But it was a reason. It was a reason for Fenton to not use the kiln fire paint. That could be their excuse, and that's what they used. Now, when the artist found out they weren't going to kiln fire anymore, they all knew that there's no paint that can stay on glass. They all knew it. They wanted to walk out. And, well, some of them wanted to walk out. But if you recall, we were in recession. Jobs are hard to find, especially in that area at the time. They didn't want to lose their job. So they conformed to keep their job. And they ended up, the last years that Fenton was in existence, they used paint that was not kiln fired and was semi-permanent at best. And we're going to talk about this. We're going to talk about this as we go forward, because I actually had an interview with the people that run the paint factory where the paint is coming from now for Fenton, the gift shop. But anyway, that's for another video. So basically, this is how this big secret came out, because we didn't know. We just didn't know. And I'm not saying that it's going to change the collectible market for Fenton, especially the later pieces that you see. But I am saying that we need to treat these pieces a little bit more cautiously, maybe not put them in the sun, definitely not wash them, just dust them. There are things that we need to do in order to keep the life of the paint, in order to keep it longer. And, maybe clear coat them. We'll have some ideas in videos that come up. But I wanted to show you on a piece. And this is what changed the marketplace. And you no longer see current artists painting on glossy unless it's kiln fired. So this elephant, and this is the logic behind all of this, and it's really quite easy to understand. This elephant is a non-porous surface. So if you're going to have anything stick to this, you're going to have to use paint, special paint that's very expensive, that has little flecks of glass in it, that when melted at extreme temperatures over 1,000 degrees, actually bond with this glass, actually become one with this glass. And so what was happening in the oven temperatures of maybe 400, that paint was baked. It was made to set. And that was it. It could never permeate that glass. It's non-porous. So now we're seeing this. And it's none of the fault of the artist at the time who worked for Fenton, because it didn't matter what piece. If it was on glossy from that time period, the very last years, the same thing's going to happen. This was their job to use this paint. And it was their job because their employer was fighting for life and had to use it. So this is an example. Here is another example of a piece that was made during that period. And this artist, you would know her. She is one of the most prominent artists. And look at what happened. And let's see here. Look at how this comes off. Okay, you saw it? It's a shame. All the paint is just like rubbing off of it. I picked this up at a sale, and this is what happens. Now, I'm not saying, again, that our collectibles are worth more if we got them at the end of the existence of the Fenton Art Glass Factory. What I'm saying is we need to be aware and take special care of them. I don't know if this was washed. I don't know what it was. But this is what happens if you don't take care of them. We're going to explore this as we go forward on what you need to do, because we don't want to have that happen. And everyone in the industry knows this. This is nothing new to anybody. And the thing is, you're getting pieces like this, and this is what sparked a lot of the conversation. This piece is a limited edition, just came out. And this is a kind of a gritty surface, but you see nothing stuck to it. And this is not a factory piece. It's a reproduction. That's very important to know. The pieces that are reproductions, they know what's going to happen to them. The pieces that were made at Fenton Factory, those are the pieces we need to protect. Those are the pieces we need to take special care of, because they are actually made of Fenton glass, and there's a big difference. So I think that is what the talk is about today. That's the big secret that we all know about. As we move forward, we'll explore the years that you need to be aware of. Also, the sanding methods that might help the paint last, the lifespan of the paint. All this is going to be covered in future videos. And I think I covered it all. So like I said, just kind of take a look at your items. Definitely don't buy anything new on the market. When you see something that is being reproduced in groups, limited edition in groups like this, you need to ask if it's kiln fired. At Rosie's, we are now putting KF on our items. Trudy Mendenhall is painting items. Now, when Trudy worked at the factory, she was just like everybody else. And you may see a video that came out, somebody washing something in a sink and the paint coming off. This would have happened to any artist that was working there at the time. Now that these artists are independent, they have the choice, and they know what the best choice is. The best choice is to kiln fire, and that is the only way you can have permanent paint. So as a group now, we are putting KF on our pieces to denote that, so that you don't have to question it. Anyway, I think that's all I have to say today, and we will continue this discussion at a future date. I've got all my notes down ready to talk about the paint. I talked to the big kahuna, and we'll talk about that in the next video. So thank you, everybody. Thanks for listening.